You're listening to Dave and Dia, a podcast about basketball, life, and the Portland Trail Blazers. Please keep all hands and arms inside the window and welcome your hosts, Dave Deckard and Dia Miller.
Hi, guys. You are listening to Dave and Dia, a Blazers Edge podcast. We are here with episode 3. I can't believe we're on 3 already. It seems like we just started. I'm Dia, and I'm here with Dave Deckard. Dave, how you doing?
Technically, 3 is just starting, but I mean, okay. It feels like we just started,
True.
no more than like 2 episodes ago.
All right, okay, I hear you. Touche.
I'm doing well, Dia. How are you?
I'm good. It's 7:30, the late hour of 7:30 at night, and my brain is obviously already ready for bed, but
Now, are you an early bird or a night owl, or how does that work for you?
I tend to be a night owl. I feel like my brain doesn't actually kick on until about 11 o'clock in the afternoon, or I guess that's morning still, 11 o'clock in the morning. See, here we are. But, after I had kids, they make you get up early. And so now I'm just all around sleep deprived, and it's just kind of hit or miss whether my brain's going to work at any time of day.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. My brain doesn't really start until noon, no matter when I'm up. See, what happens is, you get done writing for the site or whatever, doing whatever you're doing for the evening. It's 1 or 2 in the morning. And then your brain cannot just shut off,
Yes, seriously.
You got to wind down. You got to go do something. But of course, there's nothing to do that's any good at like 1 o'clock in the morning. So you sit there wasting time for 2 hours. And then it's like, oh, I better get to sleep because I got to get up in a few hours. And so that's the way the day goes.
And then you start off the morning being tired, and it's just a terrible cycle.
Yep, exactly. Welcome to the life of online media.
Yeah, so here we are at 7:30 at night, not knowing what time of day it is or what's going to come out of our mouths.
Yes, which makes for a more interesting podcast. We have no idea what's going to come out of our mouths. Neither do the listeners. We'll try to bleep out anything too objectionable, like any complaints about Damian Lillard or swear words or things we just don't say. But, we'll figure it out. I'm sure that listeners will too.
So today we've got some kind of interesting things that are going on. I feel like at this time of the season, usually for us, it's kind of quiet, but things are happening. There's a lot of media going on out there. A lot of things are being said and brought up, and I'm getting excited.
Well, see, look, time. This is a relative thing, yes, because this is weird. This is really weird for me. There was no summer. It's not summer. It's winter. And we're in the off season. And the off season is like 2 seconds long. And teams don't know their schedules yet. They're not doing a media day. They're doing a media whenever I get to it, maybe. We don't know who's going to speak. We don't know what they're going to say. They don't know what they're going to do. It's like we have entered bizarro world. Like somebody ate the purple striped pill, and now we're in an alternate reality where nobody knows what's going on, including the players and the coaches and everybody. It's just, I'm weirded out by all this.
Yeah, it's a little chaotic, but I'm here for it. I'm enjoying it. You never know what's going to happen. It seems like every day there's something new. And it's interesting because you're right. The off season has been 2 minutes long. And yet I feel like finally basketball is back. And I think it's just that, that whole big hiatus that we had there where everything was shut down. We were all just sitting here dying for it to come back. And then it did. And then it was short. And then now it's back to not have it. And I think it's just messed with my head. And all of my time frames are just gone because really, you're right. The off season's been the shortest off season we've ever had.
Maybe is some of that feeling finally real basketball is back? Because I actually loved watching them in the bubble. I liked it felt like a tournament, like every game. I enjoyed that. But there was a certain unreality to that whole thing, up to and including the championship. And God bless the Lakers. Yeah. They won it. That's fine. They are the 2020 NBA champions. But everything leading up to that was off by 5 degrees. And I still haven't shaken that, and I don't think I will shake that until probably a month or two into the season when it becomes a grind and when you can predict what's going to happen on a Wednesday night. Otherwise, I feel very out of place with all of this, and maybe some of the longing for the season to come is a longing for some kind of normality.
Yeah, I liked the bubble too. I was a fan, but I liked that, after having no basketball, all of a sudden we had basketball every single day. And it was great. But then you're right. It felt a little surreal. It was almost like, does this count? Is this real? Is this happen? Like, is this normal? And it just was very odd. And so maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's like, okay, we're finally kind of getting back to something. And especially in a world right now where nothing is normal and nothing is, back to what it was, having that back to some degree in a normal sense is kind of nice.
Yeah, Milwaukee is going, you're right, nothing that happened in the bubble was real. And Phoenix is going, yes, it was. Yes, it was. So it all depends on your perspective, I suppose. But hey, look, 72-game season, rapid developments leading up to it. Looks like there's going to be some kind of news, major news, every single week until the season actually starts. So I suppose you couldn't ask for more if you're a basketball fan or a basketball podcaster.
Yeah, it's definitely giving us a whole lot to talk about, which kind of brings me into what we're going to talk about today. I thought it would be fun to just kind of talk about some of the headlines and some of the things that are happening. Media availability is happening now, so we're getting to hear from these guys. We're hearing straight from their mouths the things that we really want to know. I think the biggest questions going into this season, at least for me, especially in the off season, seeing the trades and things that are being made, is who's going to be our starting lineup? Because we have some big names in guys like Melo who maybe aren't going to be starters this year. And it's been this whole, everybody's been throwing out there, well, what if we do this combination? Well, what if we do this combination? And so Terry Stotts had a media availability and he talked about this. Did you hear it?
I did, but go ahead, summarize for us.
All right. So basically a couple things that he said is that Covington and Jones Jr. will likely start, which I think we all kind of figured Covington would. Jones Jr. was maybe a toss-up. He also referred to Rodney Hood's injury and the possibility of a minutes restriction, and possibly initially at least the reason that Jones is going to get that starting spot. Most likely for starters, then we've got Dame, CJ, Jones Jr., Robert Covington, and Nurk would be our starting five.
Mm-hmm. And I think that you can't underline enough the Hood injury and or recovery. The problem with that potential lineup could be, of course, lack of three-point shooting. We don't know what Covington's going to do. He's not a huge creator. Neither is Jones. He's more of a finisher, really. There's going to be a lot on the big three to score. Not a problem. They can do that. But, the Stotts offense is more comfortable when everybody can touch the ball. So probably, I'm guessing that ideally Hood would slide into that 3 spot. But no use playing him there at the beginning of the season if, for instance, he can only go 20 minutes. So, look, Jones Jr. is going to be great. It's going to be a much better defensive team, probably. And what you hope for is that the forwards give enough offensive production to get by. And then what you hope for is really big scoring off the bench. Right? So you get the end of the first quarter, beginning of the second quarter, and all of a sudden you're pouring in buckets all over the place. And then the starters come back in and protect that advantage.
It would not surprise me to see Stotts shake it up a little every now and then. I think it's definitely going to be a fun starting lineup. Different than what we're used to, for sure. But I think it'll be fun to watch. And it leaves us with a really, really solid bench, in my opinion. I mean, especially looking at the bench that we've had over the past season where we struggled with our bench. I mean, those guys would come off the bench and it was just like, okay, we kind of hope that they just can keep it to not too big of a loss of what the starters did.
Yeah, you have Trent Jr., who obviously is a big player this year. This should be his year to blossom, and I think he's going to get that opportunity. You have Hood on a minutes restriction won't hurt coming off the bench. You have Carmelo in there somewhere. You have Enes Kanter there. So they should be all right.
And Ant Simons would be the backup point guard, which I know there's been talk about, but I think he's going to do well. And again, in that media availability when Dame was talking, he was confident in Ant's ability. And he said, too, why are you going to go out and get a veteran point guard when you've got me playing 35 minutes? You've got CJ, who's probably going to shift over and play that spot some as well. And, Ant's going to be a great backup. So I think that makes a lot of sense, in my opinion, looking at the roster that we have, looking at our resources. I think hearing him put it that way makes a lot of sense as well. What do you think? What do you think of Ant?
Well, the way you just put it there, it's more like he's the third string because he's not going to muscle McCollum out of minutes. And I think he's exciting in that role. Yeah. His strengths are ball handling, a nose for scoring, and fearlessness, which is great. Yeah. If he can come in and play carefree. Now, if he's looking around and here's Rodney Hood and here's Gary Trent Jr. and here's Enes Kanter and here's Carmelo Anthony, and all of them need the ball, that may be more maturity than Simons can muster at the moment. I expect him to be better than he was last year, mind you. But still, that's not playing to his strengths, being a distributor and setting other people up and taking a back seat. CJ has switched roles there where he's smart enough and veteran enough to know I'm going to get mine later. My job when I'm playing the one with this unit is to set everybody else up and make them look good, make them happy. I love CJ in that role. I think he needs to prove himself in that role. I think, if he has a future beyond Portland, which I'm not saying he does, but if he wants to establish infinite value, being able to run the point is part of that package. He's much more valuable as a 1-2 than he is as just a scoring guard who can basically score and doesn't play a lot of defense or what have you. So this is going to be great for CJ. This is going to be great for the bench. I think it's going to be great for the players around. And I think Simon still either has to prove that he can take over those minutes without a doubt, or he just kind of fits in as the third string guy, and everybody's super excited when he comes in the game, but the game doesn't hang on him.
Yeah, I agree. I think I really like to see CJ in that position. I think he plays it really well. When Dame's on the court, I think he's incredible at that spot. So I think he'll be a lot of fun to watch in that role. And I think Ant is one of those guys that has a lot of raw talent and just needs to be developed. And so being on a team like this with guys like that, I think he's going to grow. I think he's going to develop. I think a couple years down the road, he might be a solid player for us. We didn't even mention Harry Giles. He's another one that could be coming off the bench as well. And I'm excited to see him. I mean, I've seen some highlights and things like that of his, and I think he's going to be a lot of fun to watch this year.
Yeah, it'll be interesting if they can play him down low on offense, which plays to his strengths. And to be frank, the Blazers don't have that guy. I mean, Ed Davis is no longer on the team. Hassan Whiteside is no longer on the team. So there's some space down there for him to operate. I think that he can bolster Portland's rebounding, which got better, but is still, look, the Blazer teams that you really loved, either from the turn of the millennium or even the LaMarcus Aldridge, Nicola Batum incarnations back in 2014-15, they were pretty good rebounding teams. That was definitely a strength. That hasn't been there since. And I think bringing a guy like Giles into the game and giving him some restricted area space to operate in can bolster Portland's offensive rebounds. Also, I think he'll be more than adequate on the defensive end. That way, I think he's still growing there, but I think he can do that. The other really scary guy as far as rebounding, especially offensive rebounding, is Kanter. I mean, he could add a whole new permutation to the team just by his ability to go after any misses. All of a sudden, you're free to shoot a lot of shots that before you'd have to think twice about. Yeah,
well, and it's interesting, too, because in Dame's media availability, AJ McCord from Coin asked him about Enes and the fact that he's been on the team previously. And so he's coming in and he knows the team. And she said, what do you think? Do you think that's going to shorten the time that it takes to get used to each other? And I think we talked about this briefly on the last episode, that's going to be a big advantage for a team that runs a lot of what they do off of their personality meshing and their culture and how they work together.
Kanter actually may be more effective simply because he will play his style and play it fairly well and fairly hard all the time.
Yep.
His style will mesh, and you don't need to cater to him. When they first got Kanter, what we said is there is nobody who's closer as an analog to Yusuf Nurkic than Enes Kanter is. That's just who he is. It's they're not twins, but they're close. And that's incredibly powerful. Now you don't have to change your style of play when you bring the new guy in, which is critical because the Blazers aren't going to change, for instance, they're not going to pull all their star guards off the floor very often. The style of play works for the star guards. You want that continuity. It's more important to a team like Portland than it would be, for instance, to the Lakers or even the Clippers.
Yeah, I agree. I think what they've done here is just put together a team of guys that's going to mesh really well. And yeah, there are a couple new names that they're bringing in that haven't been with this team before. When you hear about who they are, they're going to fit well within this culture that Portland's developed. You know, it was interesting because Harry Giles actually referenced, this is according to Casey Hodal, but he said that he referenced seeing the camaraderie that the Trailblazers had in the bubble as one of the reasons he was excited to sign with Portland. And I think when you get guys like that who have that same mentality, they're going to kind of come in and fit in effortlessly and seamlessly rather than having to completely change how they play and who they are in order to fit in with what's already established.
Well, and Giles is a primary example of something we talked about last week. Players are starting to figure out that Portland is a place where you can come, where A, you'll be welcome, B, you're likely to look good. I mean, look, who was Al-Farouq Aminu before he came here? I mean, he was a project player who had a lot of potential, but kind of had, popped the clutch a few times on starts and was still on that hill trying to get through the light. And he came to Portland and he established himself, got a contract. Mo Harkless had a rockier time, but he too found some continuity here. Carmelo Anthony's career resurrection speaks to that. Let's be honest. If anyone was going to sign Carmelo or anyone was going to sign Giles to a 3-year, $30 million deal, they would have gone elsewhere. But if you're going to sign a minimum or short-term contract and you want to be reasonably sure you're going to have a decent chance at a bigger contract coming out of that one, Portland is all of a sudden looking pretty attractive. And that's not a bad calling card for a team like this to have.
It's interesting that you talk about those two together because there was also an interesting thing that was said about Harry Giles doing a project when he was in elementary school on Carmelo Anthony. First of all, you realize what an age gap there is in the NBA when you're realizing that there was a kid in elementary school doing a project on a guy that he's now in the league with. These guys are getting on the court with guys that they look up to and that they idolized in a sense. And I think for a fan like me, that's going to be a really cool thing to watch because I like those storylines. I like seeing things like that where this kid is getting to play with the guy that he did a project on in school. I just think that's so cool. I just think that kind of stuff is what makes me love this so much.
It echoes a lot of what Trailblazer fans experienced, I think. There were kids in the championship years. It changed the town, right? All of a sudden, people are doing book reports on the Blazers or going out and shooting. I mean, courts full all over the place. And those of us who grew up after that grew up thinking basketball was the primary sport. I mean, I remember when I was in school, you played a little bit of baseball, you played some touch football, but really the game that everybody played was basketball. And I don't think that was an accident. And people learn to idolize. I mean, how many 40-year-olds are there out there right now who, when you say Clyde Drexler or you say Jerome Kersey, do the same thing their parents did with Mickey Mantle or whatever, right? There's just that culture of we want to idolize you. We want to be a part of your family and feel like you're a part of ours and just all share this glory together. The Blazers have been a little shy in delivering that over the past, decade and a half. But that seed is still there. And if you see it sprout in the team, this chemistry stuff that you're talking about and all that, and they also succeed on the court, I think you're going to see a true renaissance among many Portland people who just embrace this entire thing that you just described.
Yeah, it's just so cool. It's such a cool thing to watch. You watch these guys and the relationships that they have and just how they build each other up. And again, I know that this is not the only team that does this, but I also know that there are teams that do not. There are teams that butt heads and clash and just have issues. I mean, another one of the things that I thought was so cool in all of this is hearing both Inez and Dame saying, hey, you know what? Nurk should be an all-star this year. He could be an all-star. They are building each other up. They are constantly singing each other's praises. I mean, you never hear them talk badly about each other outside of like, hey, yeah, he needs to improve on this. But they're never criticizing each other. They're never critical. They're never mean. And again, as a fan, I appreciate that. I don't mind a little drama on the court. I don't want it among the guys on my team. If somebody on the other team wants to talk a little trash and my team wants to respond to that and they want to go back and forth, I can get on board with that. But what I don't like to see is the guys within the team butting heads, and it just makes it way less fun to play. They don't play as well when they're not getting along. And I think that that's one of the things, again, that Portland has going for us that maybe some of these other teams don't, is that they really, truly get along really well. And that changes that chemistry on the court. I really think it does.
I think you're almost exactly right from my point of view. I am 80% of the way there with you. The other 20% is the part that says if you really want to win it all, you have to be able to stare somebody down. And you have to be able to say the uncomfortable, even unpleasant or rude things to shake people out of their complacency. Now, mind you, I think this does happen. I just think that they keep it behind closed doors, which is fantastic. Love it. And I believe also that Terry Stotts probably would have no problem with this. But look, I don't think Michael Jordan was a nice guy, as an extreme example.
No, Michael Jordan was a jerk.
But I don't think Magic Johnson was either, honestly. I don't think Isaiah Thomas was. I don't think Larry Bird was if you sucked, right? I think that there is a certain amount of, okay, what we do here is we win. And the niceness and camaraderie comes from that. I do know we've had stories, for instance, of C.J. McCollum going after Festus Ezeli, but there's kind of almost been a weird quasi-passive aggressiveness to it. I'm okay if this team yells at each other a little bit. I'm okay if someone goes Hassan Whiteside, if someone else gets on a stool, looks them in the eye, and says no, right? Now, something similar may have happened to Nurkic when he first came to, like, the apocryphal story of Damian Lillard saying, we don't do that here, we don't mess around here, or whatever it was that Damian actually said. And Nurk was like, respect. That was the beginning of the chemistry.
Right.
I'm okay with moments like that. And whatever they have to do to keep the ship tight, I think is great, especially with young players, because they're about half young players right now, and young players you bank on. I'm all right if someone gets in their face a little bit. I think, if anything, they're going to err on the cautious side, which is great. But hey, if you got to yell a little bit to win, do it.
Okay, so let me clarify. I don't mean that they all need to hold hands and sing Kumbaya all around the locker room. Like, I know what it's like to be on a team. Most people don't see this side of me so much anymore because I'm a grown adult not playing sports actively, but I am insanely competitive and I want to win. And I remember being on teams and having some emotionally driven, loud, slightly angry conversations with teammates and getting it right back too. But at the end of the day, we walked away from that and we were fine. And I think that's what I mean in that sense. I don't necessarily mean that I expect them to always be, yay, you'll get it next time. Like, I don't expect that. That's unreasonable. It's not realistic. It would be a little questionable if that's how they were behaving when, this is their job and they're professional basketball players. And quite frankly, they've made this clear that they do this. Dame has talked very clearly about the fact that he'll get on them. He'll get on those guys when they're messing around or when something's not right or when something needs to change. But the thing that he said, and this is where I meant to go with this, is he can do that because they know he loves them and they know that they have a relationship. And that's kind of what I mean in this is, they can get on each other about whatever. They're not doing it in front of cameras. They're not doing it on the court in the middle of a game. They're doing it at the appropriate times so that they can come onto that court and play a united game as a team. And that's what I appreciate. You can say what you need to say. You can get pissed off. But at the end of the day, they leave it in the locker room or wherever they need to do it. And they come on and they play and they leave that game, win or lose, still caring about each other as people. And I appreciate that. That is something that I value and something that I enjoy watching. Again, I don't mind if they want to get into it with one of the other teams. But when I'm sitting as a fan and watching these teams play and they're yelling at each other, they're fighting each other, they're whatever at each other, it's just a personal pet peeve of mine. Maybe nobody else cares about this. I don't know. But for me, I like to see them getting along. I just do.
It'll be interesting to see if having more options will affect the relationship somewhat. Now, look, nobody's going to touch Dame, Nurk, or CJ. They're etched in stone until they leave or are traded. But up to this point, the Blazers have basically had one clear option at each position and then some reserves. That's not so anymore. There's going to be competition for playing time. There's going to be considerable pressure to perform. A cold streak on the floor is going to mean a little bit more than it used to because the stakes are higher. They want to win. Right. They're going for it right now and don't have a lot of time. And because there's someone right behind you who's as good as you are who could take your spot. Now, I think that's a good thing, personally.
Agreed.
And I think it could lead to better chemistry because now all the work you're putting in pays off more and you really can rely on your teammates. But it'll be interesting to see if there needs to be some jawing or jockeying on the part of the players, coaches, or whatever. And if the chemistry doesn't look quite as good this year, I'd be a little surprised, but not entirely. And I'm kind of okay with that.
Yeah, again, I'm getting a small glimpse into the locker room because all I'm seeing is, what they're saying and what's being put out there on social media and things like that. But from what I see, it seems to me that we are going into this season and people understand what their roles are. That was a big thing with Melo. People were like, will he take a back seat? And Stotts was very clear about the fact that he is most likely going to be coming off the bench. I think they know their roles, and I think that's what they're there for. And I think, again, at the end of the day, a lot of these guys, for the most part, they are working towards one common goal, and it's not about each individual. It's about winning as a team. I'm not one of these give everyone a participation trophy people, I promise you. I want to win, but I like to see people win while they're being nice to each other. I can't.
Good story. The winning's about the story and not just about the numbers and the trophy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to see you win just because you shoved everyone else out of the way and play. Like, I don't want to see that. I want to see you play together. I want to see you be a team. I want to see you succeed. I want, at the end of the day, when we're standing there as the NBA champions, I'm just saying, I want to see everybody feeling good about that. The trophy isn't enough for me. I want them to all be getting along by the end of it.
Yeah, I don't think you get that trophy without shoving the other team out of the way.
And the other team, they can shove the other team all over the floor. That's fine. I'm good with that.
But it wouldn't hurt them to have a little bit of that in practice as well. Just this is where you learn to be mean. This is where you learn to go hard or you don't get on the floor.
Right.
People don't understand this, and we're way too early for this because the 2001 NBA playoffs are as far away as they could possibly be right now. But there will come a moment in every playoff run where the other team will do anything to get you out of your game. And you can't go in there being nice. You can't go in there saying, I'm just going to persevere and play my game and ignore what they're doing. At some point, if you want that trophy, you've got to take it. And you've got to take it from guys like Kawhi Leonard and LeBron James. And that means elbows, and that means stare downs, and that means ripping a rebound away that they were sure they're going to get because you were smarter and you were faster and you were going to get there no matter what. This is the Dennis Rodman aspect. This is the Maurice Lucas aspect that the Blazers have been missing a little bit. I think they have the potential to get it. I mean, I think Covington can probably bring that. Jones can learn to bring it. There are a couple others maybe. I kind of like Trent's moxie personally. I think Trent could really be that kind of go-getter.
Yeah.
I think they just need to unleash the hounds here. They need to okay, bare your teeth, do whatever. Don't let anybody take an inch from you. Go out there and fight tooth and nail. I want to see the good story too, but if I have to choose, you can be nice in the off season. Just go out there and rip people's veins out in the playoffs, and let's win.
Look,
and then we'll all listen to you being nice after.
I'm all for that. I'm all for go out there and elbow away and go out there and play a little down and dirty. I'm okay with that. Just high five your teammates when you're done.
Sure. And you know what? If they end up trading Carmelo mid-season because there's no room for him, I'm okay with that.
I am not okay with that. Just for the record, I am not okay with that.
I get it. But I mean, ideally, that's what you want to do. Some of these guys, you want to preserve the depth, but not all of them are going to stay. You want to know by mid-season how this is trending. And you want to know because they've had the battles in the practice and they've emerged and you're going like, that guy did it. I want that guy by my side when we have to face down these Western Conference giants because he just took those minutes from a guy who was also good and he left no doubt that it was going to be him. I think we need to see a little bit of that. That said, we've gone on long enough about this chemistry thing. I think we both agree there's just two sides to the coin, and somewhere in the middle is probably where the Blazers will meet.
Yeah, I don't know who came up with that mid-season trade stuff. I'm not a fan, but that's a whole nother podcast.
We don't even know where the games are, let alone the trading deadline. I think that has been established, but you can't trade anybody until you know how many games they'll have played by then. And
oh man. Okay. Let's talk about ESPN's projected standings that came out today. Should I read them?
Yeah,
Should I say what they are? Okay, so in the number 1 spot in the East, it's the Bucks. In the West, it's the Lakers. Number 2 in the East, it's the Raptors. In the West, it is the Clippers. Number 3 in the East, it's the Heat. In the West, it's the Rockets.
Come on,
Number 4 in the East, it's the 76ers. In the West, it's the Jazz.
Wait, Blazers aren't as good as the Sixers? Okay, keep going.
Well, that's the yeah.
I know, still.
Number 5 in the East, it's the Celtics. In the West, it's the Nuggets. Number 6 in the East, it's the Nets. In the West, it's the Mavericks. Number 7.
Dallas? They love Luka, I get it. And okay.
In the East, it's the Pacers. In the West, it's the Pelicans. Number 8 in the East, it's the Hawks, and in the West, it's the Suns. And while this part is not actually put on this tweet that I'm looking at, they had the Blazers coming in for the West in the 9th spot. Dave, I'm dying here.
I don't know. You go first. What do you think of that?
I think this is madness. I think this is complete madness. This is where you start getting me going on rants because first of all,
I'm going to interrupt you for a second. Hold your rant just like a volcano. You guys cannot see Dia here. Her hands are literally on her forehead. There are veins bulging through her. It is just like, oh my gosh. She's like, okay, when you tried to teach your kids the new math and you don't understand the new math and you can't understand how they wrote a textbook this way, that's exactly what Dia looks like now.
My face is hot. Like it honestly makes me, now granted, I know that this is some computer thing that does it, but the computer should be fired. I don't know why, there are very few times in life where I am at a loss for words, but I am at a loss for words. And I know somebody went argued with, do you see this? I can't get a sentence out.
Oh my gosh. This is priceless. Okay. So yell at the computer, Dia. It's the computer's fault. Go ahead.
Somebody got into it with me on Twitter today and was like, well, there's only, 1.5 games between the 3rd seed and the 8th seed, and the Lakers and the Clippers are in a totally different whatever. And we went into the playoffs last year as the 8th seed. We have improved. We won the offseason. That was established in our last podcast. We won the offseason after going in as the 8th seed. How can you tell me that now we are 9th? That doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It does not make sense. And somebody at ESPN should be fired. That's mean. That's a little the computer.
That might be a little bit too far, considering a third of their staff just got canned. You might have a little revolution.
Okay. No.
We'll rein that one back. God bless all you media people who are out of work.
True. Nobody should be. No, that was not. That was backing that up. But someone throw that computer out the window, because honestly, that I legitimately cannot understand. I'm looking at these teams and thinking, we can beat the Suns, we can beat the Pelicans, we can beat the Mavericks, we can beat the Nuggets, the Rockets as 3? Well, you should talk because I'm not making sentences.
Oh, I love this. This is great. What happens when the Rockets trade Harden to the Nets is a question. Also, yeah, computers don't know chemistry, right, Dia? See, there you go. There's part of the algorithm that they don't get. So look, I don't think it's guaranteed that the Blazers get a top 4 seed. I don't think.
Hold on. Wait. Doesn't someone look at this from the computer and go, hey, this might be a little wrong. We should correct it? Like, does it have to just, is that allowed?
No, because they do numbers, and numbers are everything, yeah?
Okay.
So,
right. Okay. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's interrupt away. I feel like at this point, I think the only appropriate words are yes, ma'am. And I should leave it at that, but I will try. I am not arguing with that.
My face is red and hot, and I'm like a little shaky. I'm a little fired up about this standings. I just don't. Okay, Dave, it's your turn.
It used to be my turn. It's been my turn 3 times now. But, okay, I don't think it's guaranteed the Blazers get a top 4 spot. As much as we want to say it, and as much as I think they have that potential, I don't disagree that they have the potential. If you ask me if it's likely, my heart says, yeah, and my brain says, well, they'll be in the hunt, okay? So it's not a Loctite guarantee. I don't mind saying second half of the bracket is Portland's comfort zone. I think 9th might be low. Pelicans.
You think?
Yeah, Pelicans, question mark. Suns have yet to, I know, Chris Paul, but, and by the way, Monty Williams, love Monty. I think any team he coaches is going to be better. Love what they've done. At the same time, I don't think they're clearly above the Blazers. I think the Blazers get credit because in the midst of all of this chaos, they do have continuity. Their big 3 have not changed, even with Nurkic coming back. They always perform at a given level. Yes, they have dips and valleys during the season and peaks, but they're not a new team. Okay. They've got a lot of new players, but those players are going to fit in. So I think Portland has some natural advantages. And also, I don't think you count Damian Lillard out of anything. I don't think you can count Lillard into the top elite of the NBA as far as carrying his team there, like LeBron and Kawhi do. But I don't think you ever count Lillard out of the playoffs. So I would be more comfortable with minimum maybe 6, and I'd be happier with 5. If you went 4, I wouldn't argue. But I agree that 9, the numbers probably don't tell the whole story here. I think if the Blazers do finish out of the playoffs, as we talked about last week, that's a disaster. And I think it's a referendum that cannot be ignored. But somehow I do not think that's going to happen.
I would put him at 4 or 5. If I were doing this, I would put him at 4 or 5. Would you have the Rockets at 3?
Not likely, because I don't think they're going to be the same Rockets at the end of the year that they were at the beginning.
No, I agree. Lakers and Clippers, I'll let them have that. Okay, fine.
Well, the Clippers are overrated at this point, aren't they?
Agreed. I think we saw that in the bubble. And there's obviously been changes since then. So yeah, I would say that the Clippers are a little overrated. But I'll still give them that spot. But it's just it's just I can't talk about this. I just think it's insane. And it was interesting watching it blow up on Twitter. I'm really active on there. I like to watch what Blazers fans say about stuff like this. Even the Blazers themselves, Inez posted 4 lines of laughing faces at it, and CJ McCollum tagged Dame and said, just want to make sure you've seen this. I think, if nothing else, I guess I have to look on the bright side and say all this did was light a fire, because we have always done well when we are counted out. But I think what you said is correct. I think you cannot count Dame out ever. And I think that this computer program that someone developed does not take into account the way that these guys, they see that they need to do something and they get it done. Or the way that they feel that pressure and they perform. Or Dame will just go on a streak and do it. I just think you can't account for that. But
and look, stats are not good with defense and depth, which is the 2 things that the Blazers have added. And they know nothing about chemistry, which you cited as another strength. Now, that's an intangible. But I think it's inarguable that their defense will be better this year than last year. And their depth is light years better. So your projection is going to end up lower than reality. Now, That said, it seems like every year since LaMarcus Aldridge left, there's been something that someone has said that lights a fire under the team, and we're going to be better than that, and that's the yardstick of success. We were better than the worst projection about us, the one that made us so mad at the preseason, and those people don't know what they're talking about. Okay, fine. But we're not in second grade anymore as far as our NBA careers and the growth arc of this team. We're all grown up. And it doesn't matter what anybody says about the Blazers. It doesn't matter where they're projected. Beating those projections is no longer the mark of success. They need to be doing better than that now. They cannot finish sixth and bow out in the first round or even the second round and say, ha, we did it. No, you didn't. The yardstick is clear right now. Western Conference Finals and make a credible shot at the NBA Finals. If you want respect, if you want better projections, if you want this team to continue on as it is, that's what you've got to do. And all this other stuff is just noise. Both the projections and your reaction to the projections, they don't matter anymore. The Blazers have got to win.
I hope we see that. It's interesting to me how social media has, in my opinion, has played into how the Blazers perform. Dame gets fired up when they count him out. I mean, even here, we're sitting here having these conversations because of things that we've seen on social media. And it's just crazy to me how it has changed the game, literally changed the game, but also just for as fans, you know, I eat this stuff up. I am constantly watching my Twitter feed, hoping for something new. And I just eat it up. And I think other people do as well.
Yeah, and they're going to give it to you. The Blazers are going to give you some. And by the way, again, we will say they are the masters at this. They are the world champions of social media, both on the players and the organizational sides of things. They are just without peer. I mean, look at how badly, for instance, the New York Knicks, which should have every advantage, look how badly they've bungled everything about their public image. And meanwhile, here's little Portland off in the corner, schooling everybody. I mean, everything from bringing their media in-house, right, which was a clever and a smart move, especially with the people that they got, right? The way that they have aligned themselves with media organizations and with social media followers, the way that they use their video, their timing, their wording, everything that they do on Twitter to provoke the exact reaction that they want. And the way, above all, I think, that guys like Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum really have crafted, like a fine wine, their social media brand to be so empathetic and yet so proficient, and those two don't always go together, that there's absolutely nothing you can question about them. If you wanted to find something about Damian Lillard, you would have to dig so far back that it would be nonsensical at this point. You can't find anything about them that doesn't make you go, yeah, or good job, or that's cool. And I think 90% of that is just them being honest and open. But the other 10% is them being honest and open about strategic parts of themselves and their organization that are absolutely going to play to the followers. And it works. So, yeah, look, social media is a great democracy, and they play that democracy very well.
The Trailblazers' social media is incredible. I mean, they are fun to follow. They are constantly posting stuff about the players, stories, all the stuff, you know, all the stuff that I like, all the stories and things that I like. They repost the stuff that their players are doing. You're exactly right. You know, they make people love them. They're so good at it. They're so good at it. They're funny and they're heartfelt. And you're exactly right in that it's not just the official team. It's also the individual players. You know, you watch them go back and forth and interact with each other and interact with other people and things like that. And it's addicting. It's hard to stop. It's something that I really enjoy watching.
Well, it's the world you hope would exist, right? When you dream about the NBA or being around the NBA, you dream about this happy land where everybody's on the same page and all the stuff you just talked about 10 minutes ago, right?
Right.
The NBA is not like that most of the time in most places.
Right.
Portland was born into an image, or their championship DNA anyway, very much included that image. And they cultivated that and lived it out for a while. There was a time when they did a better job talking about that image rather than contributing to it.
Right.
But they've started to contribute to it again, and for all the reasons we just mentioned. And it's like they developed an understanding of A, what they've got as far as community image, but B, what translates to now. They have the magic going right now. Now, it'll be interesting to see if that outlives Damian Lillard. It'll be interesting to see if what translates well in 2020 still translates well in 2030, or whether they've moved on, or what happens. That said, again, follow them. I mean, that's just everyone that you've named and everyone you could think of is really worth following in this market. And as you could tell by those projections and what people are saying of them, that's not true everywhere.
Yeah, well, and I think, too, another thing that I find really interesting is they've almost created that same atmosphere in the fans. If you are active on Twitter, I have several friends who are involved in NBA Twitter but are not Blazer fans. And they will say, Blazer fans are different. You know, when the Blazers are playing, my timeline blows up with Blazers everything. I feel like I've found myself in this world of Blazer fans that is so, for someone who's living in Los Angeles, but whose heart is in Portland, it's a great place to be because I feel like I get to be part of this camaraderie and this community that is on Twitter that is so much shaped, in my opinion, around how the Trailblazers do things.
Yeah, and that's what nobody understood, I think, when I started doing this, when Brandon Roy was drafted, LaMarcus Aldridge, 2006, really. And we hit huge spike, of course, in 2007 when the Blazers got the first overall pick. But everyone was still approaching this either from a public relations standpoint, sell tickets or sell the image of the team. And I mean sell. I don't mean promote. I mean sell. Or the media standpoint that, well, media are a brand apart and a people apart, and we don't talk to the common people. They come to us for information and we deliver it from afar, right? You didn't see a lot of media people, for instance, engaging in any kind of social media or even in the comment sections on their own sites. That would be beneath them, right? That has changed radically. And we certainly rode the wave of that. Maybe in some ways, I won't say too much, but we helped promote that the success of Blazers Edge very much is the success of what you're talking about. And I think the world, at least the Portland world, has caught on. And I think it's a powerful, powerful chemistry. But we all got taught that from what the Blazers originally did in 77, where if you look at those retired jerseys up there on the wall, and does Dave Twardzik belong there or Larry Steele compared to most NBA retired jerseys? You can look at the stats and make a strong argument not. But mention those names and your dads or grandparents or moms or grandmas who lived through it will immediately spout stories about how great that team was and what Steele did and who Twardzik was and how important he was and all this stuff. And that's exactly the kind of storytelling and chemistry that differentiates the Portland market from most. I
always wonder if I'm biased because I'm a Portland fan and this is what I'm immersed in. And especially now with Blazers Edge. You know, Blazers Edge, I don't know how much I'm allowed to say about this, but Blazers Edge it's just such a stand-up organization. You do such a great job running things and keeping the integrity of it. You know, I have been so impressed with how sensitive things have been handled. And just the fact that this site has chosen to do things with integrity and compassion. And I appreciate that. And I don't think that that's always typical of media. I think that media looks for a story. And sometimes those stories come at the expense of the people they're about. And I really appreciate that we don't do that. I think that tends to be true of a lot of Portland's media, but I have definitely felt that with Blazers Edge.
I think there's been little opportunity. There was some, but there's not a lot of controversy to grab onto. I think that Portland is a more mature market. Like, look, my example, I was in Minnesota when Kevin Garnett and Stephon Marbury were the thing, okay? And this was Minnesota's first taste of success. And you could tell that they were a young franchise and the entire media machine around them was neophytes when it came to NBA basketball, okay? You could tell by the way they talked. You could tell by the way they handled things as Marbury began to shake. You could tell by how they handled his departure. You could tell by how they thought about Garnett and how that evolved over the years. And once you've gone through some of those things, I think you develop a maturity that allows you to sift out the stuff that's really critical from the stuff that doesn't matter, that's just sensational. And there's always someone who's going to pick up on the sensational, and I think there are people in the Portland market who will do that as well. But I think on balance, most of us are balanced. And even when we see the sensational, we're pretty able to say, yeah, that's, I can see why that's out there, but that's hardly critical.
Yeah, I think about sometimes, what would the NBA have looked like and the fans and all of this have looked like if in the times of guys like Dennis Rodman? Can you imagine Dennis Rodman with social media? I mean, I feel like that would be something. That would be something. I wonder about how the culture, you can see some changes from the time that, I'm 35. So I've been watching the Trailblazers for a good 30 years. And 30 years ago, granted, I was young. And so obviously I'm not reading the newspaper, but that's where people were getting their news from, the news, from the sports parts of the news, and from the newspaper. That's what you saw. And so the stories weren't coming, now somebody goes somewhere or somebody does something and instantly everybody knows it because someone's there with their phone, taking a picture, taking a video and posting it online. And now it's blowing up. Whereas back then, people knew that Dennis Rodman was a character, but they didn't know the extent of Dennis Rodman because it wasn't available for the world to see.
And you don't have to do Dennis Rodman. I mean, you can point at some of his teammates that looked more culturally aligned.
True.
But once the cameras were off, were their own people and did their own things. And this is one of the qualms I have when you hear someone, for instance, like Kenyon Martin, who this week wrote an article about how modern players aren't tough and they should get more physical and whatever. And there was a gritty, tough, hard exterior to the NBA 30 years ago that isn't quite the same anymore on or off the court. And yes, a lot of today's players would have a hard time translating back 30 years ago on or off the court because they'd get eaten up. It'd be like a greenhorn going on a crab boat and going through that kind of grinder. And I'm not saying they don't go through the grinder today, but I believe it when the old guys say it's a different machine. And it is. At the same time, the part of that story that's not told is that players who were revered, who were stars, who were dominant back then, would have almost as much trouble coming into the now. It's not that their court game wouldn't translate, although it might not as easily because those inside shots that you lived on against slower 7-footers who, moved like tortoises, those don't exist anymore. You're going to get a 6'10" guy who's to your spot half a second before you are and who can jump just as high. So you're not going to get those off. So the on-court thing isn't automatic, but what would absolutely hurt them is the off-court. Instantly they would be exposed, their images would be out there, people would be complaining or reviling them, and all of a sudden, personally, I think just in their whatever community life, a lot of these guys would have a hard time coping with that. To them, it wouldn't be as fun or as free or as empowering as it used to be. And you know what? A lot of players nowadays are making sacrifices and also striving, I think, to make that chemistry important on and off the court and doing that work in a way that maybe not all of their predecessors did.
Yeah, I definitely think it's changed the game. The game itself has changed. There's no argument there. That's part of why I hate this GOAT debate. I hate it. I hate that debate because I don't think you can compare someone from 30 years ago to someone who's playing today. The game is so drastically different that I just don't think you can do it. And so I don't know why we have to pick one person that's the greatest of all time. I think you can have people who were great then and you can have people who are great now. And I don't think you can ever make a solid argument for who the greatest of all time is because it's just such a different game. That being said, I think outside of that, social media and the news media and the way that media is available has changed. I mean, I just look at our site by itself and how something happens and within 20 minutes it's up on our site. That never used to be the case. You know, people would have to wait until the news the next day or until the newspaper came out. It wasn't readily available like that. You couldn't find this information so quickly. And I think that you're right in the sense that, you know, these guys, their entire lives are on display. And not only that, but I mean, there's been guys this last year, especially in light of 2020 and all the things going on, who have come forward and talked a lot more about mental health and how reading the things that they're reading are affecting their mental health. I've said on here, I've said in my writing, I've made a lot of comments about the fact that I think it's important to remember as people are critical of these guys, which is, it's natural when you're watching a team and someone has a bad night to be critical, but you have to remember always that they are people first and that they are people with real feelings and that they are people with real feelings that take these things to heart. And so when you get on social media or you get on whatever it is you're getting on and you type these terrible things about how trash they are or whatever, I hate seeing that. There's a little part of me that always thinks like, yeah, but could you do better? Because you couldn't. But the fact of the matter is, whether you could or whether you couldn't, it's important to be a nice person. Like, it's just important to remember that these people are real people with real feelings, and everything that's said about them, they have access to that.
And be a nice person, unless you're playing the Lakers or someone projects you ninth, then get mean.
Even when I go on rants.
No, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the Blazers.
I'm just saying, I again apologize to the ESPN staff member that I called to be fired. That was a rash.
It was a computer. It was you're Will Smith here, suspecting the AI. We know how this ends. The computers take over the world, right? So you're actually a freedom fighter right now.
We're slowly getting there. But I just think, you can be critical of a player's performance or even a player themselves without being a jerk. I'm just saying.
We'll try. Well, speaking of critical and being jerks, people are going to call us jerks if we don't wrap it up as much as, I could go easily another hour with you, at least, if not two. I mean, this is how it's going. But nobody gets away with that unless you're talking about wrestling or adult subjects. So
we try to keep it short and
we
to
didn't,
the point.
but that's okay. I mean, we have 6 things we didn't get to. That's why you guys have all got to come back next week. Dave and Dia will be here again and with you every week throughout the season. We hope you are having as much fun as we are, and we will see you again next Thursday.
This has been Dave and Dia, a Blazers Edge production. Find more basketball talk at blazersedge.com. Watch your step as you exit, and we hope to see you again soon. Dave and Dia, what is that? A Swedish skin cream company?